Hello, and we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and welcome along to the first ever Tackling Sport Masters preview. I'm delighted to be joined firstly by my brother Sean, as always.
How's it going?
I'm delighted to be joined on the line by Malachy Clerkin of the Irish Times. Malachy, welcome to the show.
All right, lads, how are you keeping?
Not too bad, Malachy. Well, listen, before we kind of get really into this year's Masters, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about your own Masters memories. And I was looking forward to myself and Sean talking about ours, watching the TV, but you were actually there in 2009 and 2010. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I was working for the Sunday Tribune at the time, and it was great. I got to go and cover two Masters. And like, when you're covering sport enough, like you learn not to get too kind of blown away by the experience of getting to go places. But I must say, like, Augusta was fairly special. It is the kind of place where you just kind of walk around and go, holy shit, this is a really kind of special place to be. And like you kind of tell yourself, like, Augusta has such a pockmarked history. It's a really horribly exclusive place. It has a really terrible history of racism and sexism and all of that. And you know that all of that is true. And then you walk out onto the back nine and you see these holes that you've seen on TV, and TV hasn't really done them justice. You're looking at them and you're kind of going, wow, this is a really, really beautiful piece of real estate. It really is kind of Narnia. So it was, I did two Masters, and then the newspaper folded. So that particular avenue of pleasure was cut off, and I haven't been back since. But I always say to people that if it ever comes up in your life that you have a chance to go to the Masters, go to the Masters. It is well worth the trip.
Yeah, as I said, myself and Sean have kind of, like, we were talking about that 2009 Masters before we came on air. Sean, that was your first memory of it, along with myself, and I guess it's that gathering around the TV on Sunday that makes it so special, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's the first one that I vividly remember the winner of, and all. I suppose it was a low scoring Masters. Like we said, there's a lot of 63s. Chunky Chad Campbell was up there, who was at the time one of my favorite players. And then it's grown from there. I think 2009 was near on Easter week, so you were off school the next day. But there's been so many great Masters memories down the year. Years you can talk about some of the shots, the winners, some of the stories. People like Adam Scott and Sergio Garcia winning their first majors at Augusta after years and years of close misses. You've the Bubba story, which I think if you go back on Masters history is one of the greats because of the golfing upbringing he had, if you like, and the lack of coaching and the sort of the uncut version of him, and the win around Augusta, golf's most famous golf course. It was an unbelievable story, and Augusta has that ability to create those stories. We haven't really seen a huge outside winner in a few years. Danny Willett, I suppose, but he was in really good form coming into Augusta. So look, I'm really hoping for a good week this week. The golf course is going to be the main character, if you like, and guys are going to fight to try and get on top of it.
Jesus, I'm just disgusted at the idea of 2009 being the first Masters you remember. Jesus Christ, that's the first one I think I remember is 20 years before that. Mother of God. I think Faldo's one in 89 is the first one I properly remember watching. Jesus Christ, 2009.
And out of all the
you people are way too young.
And out of those 30 or 40 years, Malachy, we won't put a specific number on it. What is your standout memory? I guess I know 09 and 10 definitely would obviously come to mind, but is there a memory that sticks out? I'd obviously have to separate the two that I was there for. Like I was there for Mickelson in 2010. I was standing about 20 yards from him when he hit the shot out of the pine straw on 13. So like that'll always be my abiding memory. But like that's not how I will watch or will have watched the vast majority of
the Masters that I will in my lifetime. So like I would go back to, like, I remember Langer in '93, his second Masters, where I think it was it Ben Crenshaw or Chip Beck or one of these guys that he was playing at. And, you know, I remember, I think I have a great memory of really reading about it afterwards. And maybe that was where I kind of got into sports writing a bit, along with sort of the football and GA and stuff like that, where I do remember the Golf Digest magazine after Langer won that went on about the other guys were kind of laying up to 15, and he was probably still, like, it was probably, Jesus Christ, I'm this ancient, he was probably still using persimmon woods at that stage, playing off the fairway, you know, an old persimmon 3-wood to 15. So I remember that, and then in later years, like, I would definitely remember, I have a great memory of Mickelson in 2004. His back nine, him and Ernie Els. I remember being in the pub for that. I remember being in Toner's Pub in Bagot Street, and like it's kind of funny, especially at the minute when there's no pubs open. But it's kind of funny to think of a sport that isn't football or isn't GA absolutely captivating a pub. And that was the case. I remember clear as day on this Sunday night of 2004, everybody in the pub was sort of quiet between shots and roaring when an eagle went in, or when a birdie went in, or when somebody carried the water, or when somebody went in the water. And I remember it being a really sort of captivating Sunday night. But otherwise, I think a lot of them kind of meld into each other, because I watch every shot of every Masters. Like, I unless I'm stuck at work, which looks like being the case this Sunday, sadly for me, I never miss a shot, you know. So I'm going to be in Croke Park on Sunday, it seems, unless I can wheedle my way out of it. But it looks like I'm going to be there watching the Dubs hammer Leash with Sky's coverage on the laptop, and so relying on somebody else to take the scores from the GA that I'm watching.
I think the last tee off time is 3:20, or it's going to be around that 3:20 mark, Malachy. So best of luck trying to get some coverage on that. I wasn't going to bring that up. On the Sunday, but
look, as long as people feel my pain, I don't care.
No, you've my sympathy anyway. But I suppose moving on to this year's Masters, I'll go to you, Malachy, just to stick with you for this one. It's going to be a little bit different in terms of the 2T start. They got rid of the 10-shot rule, which we were talking off air, which was almost like a bullet point in an article that you nearly missed. It's like, why did they get rid of that? And I guess it's all down to not clashing with the NFL on Sunday, which for those people outside America is madness. But it just shows you America, no matter the Masters golf's biggest pull, that it will always play second fiddle at best to NFL.
Well, everything else does, you know, in the States, and especially now, like the NFL is it week 9 now or week 10? You know, they're getting towards the point, you know, Thanksgiving is the next week or the week after. So like they're getting to the point where the good teams start to show themselves and the mediocre teams start to fall away. So the games start to matter a lot more. And like the Masters is the biggest show in golf, but there's still no point going up against, you know, a slate of a full 12 NFL games. So they'll try and get it rattled out and done fairly early on Sunday, but also there's a light issue, of course. You know, it gets darker earlier in the winter than it does in the spring, so I guess that's why they have to do it.
Yeah, and Sean, moving to you for this, I guess the behind closed doors Masters, it's different. It's not April anymore. How do you think that will play a factor at all in how the players will approach the weekend? The players in contention, does the Masters record matter as much as it did maybe last year?
Well, look, I suppose we spoke, you know, we've been building up to this Masters for a good month on this podcast, and I said about a month ago, I think it'd be the best sporting event of 2020, and I think it'd be the main event that would carry itself in the best light in the era of COVID with no fans, and just due to the nature of the golf course. I think for certain people, the no fans won't help them, and for some it will. You know, you think of someone like Brooks Koepka that kind of relies on the pressure coming on Sunday afternoon and the crowd sort of getting up and everyone getting a little bit, more anxiety in them. I think Brooks can really come to the fore then, and I think someone like him will miss that. But then I think it gives a great opportunity to the likes of, Xander Schauffele and Patrick Cantley, guys who never won a Masters or never won a major, who've won big golf tournaments. Xander's won a WGC's won the Tour Championship, and he can get into that stage where there's a lot of good golfers who've never won a major, and Adam Scott and Garcia, who we spoke about there, they waited a long time to win a major. So I think that's going to be, I think that can play a part for those kind of players if they can get themselves into contention, which they will. Xander Schauffele will be up there. He's got an unbelievable iron game, and it's just a case of whether they can hold their nerves. And I think the lack of fans can make it a little bit easier for them. And I think for some of the bigger golfers like Brooks and maybe even a DJ, that they kind of rely on the pressure coming. That's when they play their best. I think they could come under pressure. I think it could suit Rory as well. The less distractions, the better for Rory. I think it's another case of him going, well, look, let's try the Masters with no fans. It's another opportunity for him. And I think he goes into every Masters with everyone talking about the Grand Slam, and he's one of the favourites again. Look, he hasn't played an awful amount of good golf. He's played, 2 or 3 good rounds in a week and a bad round, and you can't afford to do that. And Augusta's the kind of course where, if you hit 3 or 4 bad iron shots into some of those pin positions, onto some of those holes, I mean, it goes from a 74 on most courses to a 77, 78, and you're, automatically almost out of the golf tournament. So there is going to be pressure on those guys, and maybe the fans for Rory, another sort of chance for him to have a crack at it.
Yeah, and Malachy, you spoke just before you come in, and because you actually experienced and tell us some of the holes that the no fans make a difference. This is No Lane podcast after the US Open, I think, and he one of the guys there was saying he was convinced that every single tournament would be different with fans, because it's just the way it is. And some people kind of took a little bit of offense, for want of a better word of it, that he said Bryson wouldn't have won by that much because he could have won by more, he could have won by less, but fans are that important to a golf tournament and the atmosphere. And I guess it's like watching the Premier League. You're not watching the real thing, and I guess it will always be slightly different. How much of a factor do you think that is, and how do you reckon some of those holes will play without fans?
Well, I think what are they? They're 6 months into playing without fans now. When the restart came, I guess, whatever
June,
it was, June, yeah. So if the Masters had been in June, let's say for the sake of argument, of course it couldn't have been. It's too hot in Georgia to play it in June. But if the Masters had been then I think you could be talking about. I think it's a reasonable conversation then to say, well, it might suit this guy and it might not suit that guy. I think they've all been playing in tournaments with no fans for long enough now that I think that advantage has surely flattened out, or disadvantage has surely flattened out. Nobody is going to be surprised in any way by playing on an empty course this week. So I think from that point of view, I think the fan factor is very, very minimal. I don't think it's I don't think there is more pressure or less pressure because of the absence of fans, simply because they're just that used to playing without fans at this stage. Like, everybody has played whatever, at least, let's say, 6 to 10 tournaments now without fans there. So it was probably weird at the start. It might be a little bit weird around Augusta because they're that used to having people there, but I don't think it's going to make a big difference. Where it could make like a material difference. They take out the intangible stuff like pressure and all of that, but a material difference to how you play some of the holes. Like, everybody can picture the famous holes on Augusta. Close your eyes and you can see the 12th, you can see the 13th, you can see the 15th, you can see the 16th. You know that all those greens don't have people around them anyway. The fans are so far back from them. Like, they famously say, like, if you hold a putt on the 12th green, you hear it hit the bottom of the cup before you hear the crowd cheer. because the crowd doesn't see it. You can hear it. You can hear the ball rattling in the cup, and then there's just a beat, and then the crowd goes up. So it won't materially affect those holes. But there are a couple of holes on the course that actually may not get as much TV coverage, or just aren't as famous. The second is the downhill par 5, and you know what they always say about how TV doesn't do the hills at Augusta justice. I had heard that a million times before I went there, and then I went there and I went, oh my God, they're exactly right. Like when you're hitting your second shot to the second, you're hitting 180-ish yards downhill, or maybe 200 to 180-ish yards downhill. And like it is a really steep gradient downhill. But the thing is, when there's a big crowd horseshoed around that green, when there's a couple of hundred people horseshoed around that green, your mind's eye, your picture in your head automatically sort of sees the shot you have to make. That is different now when there's no crowd there, because like behind that second green is an expanse of grass all the way up to the clubhouse. So essentially you're hitting down into a bowl, but all you can see is green. Like all you can see is a huge field behind it, for want of a better term. And there's, that is something that they have to adjust to. The same with the seventh green. Seventh green is where it's right up a hill. It's that long par 4, really narrow par 4, but the green is up on a hill, and it's the green that the crowds are actually closest to. Like it's the one where if you go through the back of it, the ball only has to hop like 5 or 6 yards before it hits one of the fans on the leg. So if you overhit your shot, and you're hitting it up to a green that you can only just see the top of the flag. If you airmail that green, if you overhit it, then you're going to have a much trickier chip back now, because the ball doesn't have the crowd to bang to stop it, and so you have a longer chip into a downhill green, probably to a downhill flag. So those are the ways. I think that it could affect the gameplay more so than the pressure or whatever. I think on a tangible level, the fact that there's no crowds around some of these greens, and maybe only 4 or 5 of them, could have a material effect.
And I think for me, I'm most looking forward to seeing, like I said, the 7th hole, the 9th hole, because they're always been two big holes. If you can sneak a birdie in there with a good iron shot into the pin on Sunday's normally cutting a bit of a ball. And the 9th is one where the camera is sort of on its side, looking at the hill. And I can only imagine that's a fixed camera. So with the lack of fans there, they might be able to get a camera more at ground level. Yeah. And I think that was one hole that's always been sort of in my mind, because you can see that hill more than most other hills. But I think, like Malachy said, I think some of the holes it's going to make a difference and others isn't. And I think it's the person who most adapts to it the quickest and can find areas where you can sort of hit into it and make your par. There's a lot of talk historically on 11 that if you hit a right of the green and take the water out of play, you fancy yourself to get up and down more times than not. And now there's that famous Larry Mize chip, and I think a few people might play that way. Now the 11th isn't the hole it once was with the distance, because people are driving it further, and maybe where it was a 5 iron or a 6 iron, it's probably now a 7 or an 8 iron into that pin, and it's a different hole. But I still think that there'll be someone who will bring something different to Augusta and maybe sort of tinker around it a little bit more, and maybe is a little bit more clever and misses in the best spots possible. And like I said, that could be someone who's been there and done it. That could be someone like Tiger, who knows the course so well. It's those, when you hit a bad shot, you hit a bad swing, it's making sure it's in the right portion of the green or it's in the right bunker. And I think that experience is invaluable. And that's why, for all that there's favourites for some of these guys that have been really good on tour this year, a lot of them haven't won around Augusta or haven't even competed.
Yeah, so we've done well. I think it's a record for any Masters preview. Listen to 20 minutes we haven't talked about Bryson DeChambeau, which is impressive.
Thought we were going to get the whole way.
Yeah, I know. Malachy kept on, and there's another thing about this hole, but no, we're going to have to talk about Bryson, who is the boogie favorite. So that's my kind of way to get it. This is an actual quote last night, Malachy. It was late enough. I don't know if you missed it or not. He says he's going to play Augusta like a par 67. So if he does that for 4 days, while he's going to finish on 20 under, he's surely going to win the tournament. Is there a potential that Bryson can go and win this by, like he did the US Open, by 5 or 6 shots?
Yeah, of course there is. Yeah, I mean, he playing it like a par 67. What an arsehole. Anyway, yeah, of course there is.
Actual quote as well.
Of course there is. There's a potential that anybody could do it. You know, these guys are amazing. They're phenomenal players. I have difficulty believing that he is going to do it for a couple of reasons. We know that at some level, course form matters at Augusta. I know it can sometimes be overstated, but it is definitely a thing. You know, there wouldn't be the same names popping up towards the top and rising towards the top every year otherwise. And his name has never popped up, really. You know, he led last year. He was good in his amateur year, but he's never finished in the top 20. And, you know, the Masters is the smallest field of all the majors. It's the one where the cut takes out the biggest proportion of the field. You're left on Sunday with only, you know, 50 odd players, maybe 60 at a push playing. And for him not to have got himself into the top 20, that's not a great record. So it certainly doesn't point at somebody who's going to play it as a par 67. And secondly, you know, this is all predicated on the fact that he's supposed to be, you know, he's going to be driving the ball 400 yards. And that's fine. Yeah, knock yourself out, Bryson. But as everybody knows what the key to playing Augusta is. You know, Tiger Woods is the best ever player of Augusta. It's not because he's the best driver in the world. You know, when he was the best player in the world, when he was maybe the best player in history, he still wasn't a great driver. So if this is all predicated on Bryson having reinvented driving the golf ball, I wouldn't be racing to back him at 8-1 or 15-2 or 7-1 or whatever he is. I don't think he's the best player in the game. I think Dustin Johnson is the best player in the game. And there's also, you know, and you can prove anything with stats, but Justin Ray, who's, you know, the guru of all stats, you know, points out that he's been statistically the worst putter in the field of everybody who's made the cut the last 3 years. You know, I'm not saying he's not going to improve that. He's obviously has been in amazing form since the restart. And his US Open was extraordinary. It really was extraordinary on the Sunday, the way he just blew everybody away. But for somebody to be such a dominant feature of all previews that there have been to this year's Masters, I would want somebody who was not the worst putter in the last 3 years. I would want somebody who has been in the top 20 at least once in his career. I would want somebody who has at least been a factor on a Sunday, which he hasn't been. So it's a huge jump from his Augusta profile to somebody who's going to play it as a par 67 and is going to finish 20 under. If he does it, fair play to him. I'll enjoy watching it because I'm not overly against, you know, you tend to have to find yourself on one side or other of the culture wars when you're talking about Bryson DeChambeau. I'm not particularly I love to see, you know, somebody who can drive the ball 400 yards is pretty impressive in my book. But so I have no real cultural or traditional objection to him winning the Masters. If he's going to go and win it, I'll doff my hat to him. But I think the hype is a little overblown given this particular tournament. You know, I think he has great claims going into any tournament, and he obviously has serious claims here. But there are guys who have much better Augusta records than him, who are twice, 3 times, 4 times the odds of him. I don't know. They seem more interesting prospects than Bryson to me.
Just before you come in, Sean, I guess, Malachy, the one counter argument to that would be, you know, that it's 21st, 38th, and 29th. His 3 Masters position. I guess is he not a different player now if he's added 20 yards to his game compared to those 3 times? And is he not a player in so much better form that he not only deserves the favoritism, he probably deserves the talk given what he did at the US Open?
Yeah, to a certain extent. But like we know, why do we preview the Masters every year? Because it's a different tournament. It's not. Yeah. You know, this isn't. He's not going out. We're not talking about a normal PGA Tour tournament here. Or we're not even talking about a PGA Championship. We're talking about the Masters here. We know that historically, the Masters is a quirky course unto itself. Brilliant course, amazing course, but it identifies a specific type of game to win or to contend. I'm only talking about contending here. You know, like you know, golf tournaments are hard to win. I'm not saying that he can't win. Of course he can win. But I'm saying that if we're essentially talking about him here because of, okay, he won the US Open by 5 shots, but people have won US Opens by miles before, you know, and like Gary Woodland won it, and you know, nobody was talking about him the following year really for the Masters, or really giving him certainly not giving him this kind of attention. And so we're essentially talking about him because he hits the ball miles further than he used to. Okay, that logically ought to make his task here more manageable, but we know what Augusta is. It's a second shot golf course. You know, he can hit the ball 400 yards on every hole. If the second shot doesn't go within 20 feet, or if he misses, and like Sean mentioned it, if you miss on the wrong side, that's what makes this course. You know, that's why the same players tend to contend on a consistent basis. It's not because they're the longest drivers or the shortest drivers. There's different profiles of players who tend to rise to the top every year. But the thing that binds them all is that they know where to miss. And sure, Bryson's talking about shooting 67 every day. He's not talking about missing anywhere. So that's fine. You know, if he has decided that he can play Augusta without worrying where his misses are going to be, then, you know, he's playing a different course than the one we've watched all our lives. So again, I will be very impressed to see him go out and shoot 467s. But let's remember, in the history of the Masters, all the greatest players in the games have played it down through history. The tournament is going however long it's going. How many players have shot 4 rounds under 70? Not one. It has never been done.
Not one.
In
never.
The history of the Masters,
Didn't know that.
It has never been done.
Okay.
When Tiger won in '97, didn't do it. When Spieth and when the what was it, 3 or 4 years ago, when everybody went to got up to kind of minus 18 or whatever, still nobody has ever shot 4 rounds under 70 in one Masters. So go on, Bryson, shoot 467s, but my jaw will be on the floor if he manages it.
But I think that's it. And I think, you know, you go into Augusta, you know, on Friday, Saturday, or even Sunday and try and attack it. I mean, yes, you can get a run of birdies going, but, you know, there is mistakes out there. Look at Patrick Cantley. He took the lead, you know, straight away, made a mistake on the back nine. And I think whether it's the 14th, the 17th, the 18th, there's real bogey holes out there. And I think that's what makes Augusta so special. The one thing I would say about Bryson is wherever he's played, he still has an errant drive in him. I mean, he still has a 40-yard hook, a 20-yard slice. But at Augusta, I mean, 20 yards is a huge amount. Even go back to some memories over the years. Look where Bubba Watson was in that playoff hole in 2012, I think, where he hooks it around the tree. I don't think Bryson has that sort of shot in him. Look where Phil was. I don't think in 2010, I don't think Bryson has that in him. So if he does put himself in the wrong position, then I think he could struggle. And I still think he has a bit of a breakdown in him. A meltdown, if you like. And I think that is a huge part of it, because he is that sort of, energetic figure. But, you even saw it in the US Open when he was talking to Matthew Wolff and talking down to his caddy. And I think the caddy plays such a huge role. And I've kind of gone, later on, we might discuss our picks, I've kind of gone with a couple of players who have a really good caddy that can sort of level it out. And I just think
interesting, yeah.
Bryson is that he's still got that in him. And while he has that in him, he'll always have a 78 or a 77. And I think Bryson, he did well on Saturday, and it was the one thing I was so impressed with in the US Open. He was having a really bad day on Saturday. He was playing with Reed. They were having a really poor day. They couldn't get anything going, but he battled in there and he hung in there and he didn't try and attack it. He let the birdies come to him on that back nine at wing foot. And I think if he can do that at Augusta, there is birdies on Sunday for him, or Saturday, if he's having a bad round. And I think that's the one thing. If he can do what he did at wing foot like that, then I think he stands a great chance. But like Malachy says, a 15-2 or 8-1, I wouldn't go near.
Yeah, no, sorry, just down a rabbit hole looking at some of those driving. But no, like you said, it is a second shot, of course. Nick Faldo did say if he does drive the first green, he's going to run around naked in Augusta. So there's the threat to Bryson. So Bryson will be giving his all for 4 days. He's kind of played a practice round with Tiger, JT in the 48-inch driver. But we'll probably move on. We'll talk a little bit about Rory McIlroy being an Irish podcast. Malachy, you spoke actually on our podcast, but you spoke previously as well last year around the Open in Port Roche. I was actually there for that. It was such a deflating moment being there, and such high hopes for Rory. We didn't realise going into that we'd end up latching on to Shane Lowry which was brilliant, obviously. But your thoughts on Rory going into the Grand Slam? Sean mentioned that the no crowds might help him. It obviously hasn't. It's hindered him because he's mentioned that himself. That's the source there. But how do you think he is going into it? He's not in the best form, and just to link in with Bryson a bit, he's been trying to add ball speed to his game. Is that necessary? Is he kind of following Bryson where he should be focused on his game, maybe focus on the putting a bit more? How do you see him kind of faring in going into this week?
Like, as ever, without trying to ruin your illusions of my expertise, I don't bloody know. Like, you're looking at Rory kind of going, I used to think earlier in his career, actually, that the what was it? What was the year he had the meltdown? Was that 2013?
2011.
It would have been
2011.
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah. It was 2011.
Yeah, Schwartzel's year. Yeah, I kind of got it into my head for a while that was an aberration, not the meltdown, but the fact that he contended, and not so much contended, but led the field for a lot of the way. Because I kind of got it into my head that he wasn't an Augusta player. And that was my sort of feeling on Rory for quite a while. But I've come around to him in the last few years. I think partly, look, his talent is his talent, and there shouldn't be a course that he's not able to play. But I've watched him obviously very closely in the last few years of playing Augusta, and I do think it suits him. I do think it's a course that he has worked his way around. The problem of always with Rory is that Rory can tend to lose a little concentration, to throw and throw in a bad hole, and if he doesn't get it back straight away, to sort of throw his hat at it a bit. He's not going to change. He has talked.
We keep hoping he'll change, Malachy, but it seems the same problems. Like you mentioned those regular tournaments. Remember you were saying last time on the podcast on the Sunday, you tuned in and he was already out of contention, and you were shocked for a second, and then
then not surprised. So, but look, he's had some life changes. He's had a kid. He's had a quiet summer. He hasn't been playing great, but I do think Rory likes an event. I do think he, I don't know that he'd be getting that jazzed up for the Rocket Mortgage or whatever it was that Bryson won, his first tournament that he won back. I don't think he's played overly well, but I think there've been other things going on in his life. Like, I think, your first kid is a serious life event. I know people talk about the first baby bounce that some players get. Maybe this is going to be it, but he, I expect him to contend at some stage. I expect him to be up in the the reasonable sort of top 20, top 10 of the leaderboard at some stage. Whether that's sort of on Saturday or maybe early on Thursday or something like that, I wouldn't be able to guess. But he has shown himself, like his results at Augusta are good. They are okay. Patrick Reed sort of blew him away before he had a chance to really, or he kind of blew himself out before he had a chance to really chase Patrick Reed on that Sunday. But he has been thereabouts for the last 4 or 5 years.
And just on those finishes, Malachy. So the last 5 years before last year, 8th, 4th, 10th, 7th, and 5th going towards, and then last year obviously 21st. Yeah,
and like that's and even the 21st was, he shot a 68 on the Sunday. Started off with a 73. Like, he started off with a 73, and the lead was 66 after the Thursday. So he was 7 shots back, and Rory's going to go through the motions when he's 7 shots back after the first day. He'll give it a go for the front 9 on the Friday. But if he hasn't made it to within if he hasn't got back sort of a couple under par, we know him. We know who he is. We know that the shoulders will go and the head will go and the world will be against him. And then, look, he shot a 68 on the Sunday, and there was fellas a lot further up the leaderboard that would have loved a 68 on the Sunday. I would never rule Rory out. Obviously, he has the game on his best days. I wouldn't be a bit surprised at all. I wonder, is there? Yeah, do you know what? I wonder, is there a bet for him to finish ahead of Bryson? I'd take Rory on that.
I might take Bryson then, Malachy.
Yeah. But like that would be an interest, because there could be all the hype is with Bryson, and everybody's down on Rory. God, if you could get 2-1 in that 2-horse race, I'd take Rory there.
And I think
2-1 off me. Sorry, Sean, go on.
I think what suits Rory is, I just think that the sort of how open it is, and considering, like we said, that there's 7 guys under 20-1 in the bookies, and there's a lot more like Jason Day, Tiger Woods, Justin Rose, who are further back. I think it just kind of suits Rory. He can kind of come in. He hasn't played well. Like, how many times has he come into Augusta playing extremely well, finishing top 10 every week? And I just think if he can just get himself, and I think Rory, he needs to find that mindset that the great golfers have when they're not playing well. Brooks Koepka has this: when he's not playing his best golf, he still finds a way of getting there on Sunday, competing, hitting a 67 when he could have shot a 70. And I think if Rory can get in that mindset of sort of trying to, dog it out, if you like, work it out, and I think maybe.
Yeah, but Sean, how long have we been saying that? Knuckle down, Rory. We've been saying it to him since he was 19.
But I think, if he can just, at the moment, he's having two or three good rounds. I mean, if he can get it somewhat. I mean, we're discussing him again. Like, I mean, this is 9 years now since that incident near Butler Cabin. So I think, look, I still, I wouldn't go near Rory on if I was having a few euro on it, but. It's like every golfer. Augusta has that ability to, transform someone again and make them, look at Tiger last year. Tiger went to Augusta and just remembered that he is, the greatest golfer of his generation. And I think if Rory, this can be a monkey on his back for however more longer. And, if he is to change, he's got to try and find another way.
It does, yeah. Like you said, Malachy, it is like listening to a preview in 2015 or
I
16
know,
or something.
yeah.
It's hard to believe he hasn't won since 2014, or even is there a second in there? It seems he's always fading off, or he's never quite. I know he has been in
There's a bit
contention
of
countless
that.
times.
Now, actually, Sean makes a point there about coming in under the radar, like because the world is so weird. There kind of is no radar. Like, okay, Bryson is the radar, we'll see, but like nobody, like it's such a strange Masters because it's at a different time of year, and because like the whole of America, let's say, was talking about something else entirely for the whole of last week, and is still to some extent, and because it's the NFL season, so that's taken a lot of the sport focus, and there's so much other sport going on for the rest of the world. Like it's hard to see, it's nearly hard to convince people that this is Masters week. So yes, Rory is coming in under the radar, but I think the Masters is kind of coming in under the radar, and so that will be an interesting thing. Who focuses, who gets themselves into the proper mindset of this is actually the Masters. I'm not just out here playing another tournament, because I think there's an advantage to be gained there. I think you find the distraction level, as in the fact that there's no fans, people's minds might wander on the odd shot here, and like, you know, as Sean said, you know, you stick a 7 on the card on one of these holes, and tournament gets away from you very, very quick. You know, Tiger won last year by kind of plodding his way around on Sunday and watching all the rest of them die off. It's funny, I watched it back a little bit this morning just to refresh my memory. I had kind of forgotten how much the rest of them just handed it to him. Like 5 of them went into the water on 12, for the love of God. And like you mentioned, Patrick Cantley, Sean, you know, guy shoots 73 on Thursday and Friday, makes the cut literally on +2. The cut is +2. He makes it on the number. And then he shot 12 birdies, an eagle, and a bogey in the next 33 holes to take the lead on Sunday. Like, he went into the lead with an eagle on 15, and then stood on the 16th tee and went, shit, I'm winning the Masters. And missed the, like, anybody who's ever watched the Masters in their life knows the shot you have to hit to 16. You hit it to the middle of the green and you let the ball roll down to the hole. He hit it up to where the Saturday pin is, and a bad shot for the Saturday pin. Right away, he left him, as Faldo said on the coverage, he said he left himself a 50-foot putt with 30 foot of break. You know, and that was just, all these guys just handed Tiger his bleeding 15th major.
That doesn't suit the narrative now, Malachy, come on.
Jesus Christ, anybody watching it could tell. Like, they all just got out of his way. Like, Molinari was leading by 2 on the 12th and was back in 6th by the end of the 13th. Like, so sorry, this is what I'm getting to. Like, the Masters, you know, like, we've watched enough of them to know what it takes to win. You hang around, you're there in the back 9 on Sunday, and then you make your birdies and eagles on the way in, and you watch the rest of them fall away. That's how you win. And I don't know, Rory's as capable of that as everybody else.
And if you look at it, in the last couple of years, the people who made the big scores come Sunday, Jordan Spieth the year Willett won it. You had Molinari last year. They never tend to find themselves to get back into it, and I think that's the thing that I see someone like Bryson or even Xander Schauffele or John Rahm with the lack of Masters experience. If they attack one pin or make one mistake, very hard to go from a double bogey to get yourself. You know, you could still be a shot or 2 back, but it's very hard to get yourself into an attacking, or not an attacking mindset, but hitting another good shot into a good position. You kind of feel like you pushed a little bit, and I think that's why some of these golfers will struggle, and that's why, you know, I said it there. I think the role of the caddy and the knowledge of Augusta could be crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we'll move on to Shane Larry. Keep your comments coming in. There was a few comments earlier on. We'll get to them at the end. Quick word on Shane Larry. For some reason, I thought he had an all right record at Augusta purely based on the hole-in-one memory I had, and that was on Sunday. But good job out of quick look before, and 3 missed cuts out of 4 and a 39th. I guess there's coming in under the radar and no radar, like you said. I don't think there's any pressure on Shane, particularly he's won the Open. And maybe a broader point of Shane. Can Shane kick on and maybe contend in not just Masters but other majors going forward? or like how do you see him going? How do you see him getting on going forward? Just purely based on his major.
Oh God, of course he can. You know, Shane's the British Open champion. He's won a WGC. I always fancy him more in a big tournament than a workaday tournament. But he has never shown any ability to play Augusta or any ability, for whatever reason, which is kind of odd because with Shane's short game, you would think that it would sort of paper over whatever other cracks he has at Augusta. But like Shane hits the ball a long way, his irons are decent, and his short game is fantastic. Like so, there's no. I don't know if there's any good reason that he hasn't made any sort of splash there. But until he does, you can't really be talking about him doing so. People don't come from nowhere to win Augusta. Even as Sean mentioned, even Danny Willett. Danny Willett had a little bit of Augusta form, and definitely had decent form going into it that year. But you don't call it. There is. I would be far more. It's interesting, we always say that a rookie can never do anything at Augusta, because it takes too long to learn it. But if you gave me the choice, so this is Shane's 5th Masters. If you gave me the choice of Shane over or one or other of Matt Wolff, Morikawa, Scheffler, these guys who are Sung Jae Im, these guys are playing in their first Masters, would you take Shane's going into his 5th or those guys going into their first? I'd take a punt on one of those.
Maybe the only thing with Shane is that he's got he's got the skeletons, and Matthew Wolff hasn't got that, and I think that could be, and he played well.
But Shane isn't really a skeletons kind of guy. I wouldn't, I don't think that the place would be weighing on him, and I think he is a learner. He does have a kind of a growth mindset, as they say. Like, I do think that he will eventually crack it to some extent, and I'd be very surprised if he ended his career without a top 10 somewhere along the way at Augusta, because, as I say, he hits a good distance off the tee. He has a great short game. He has a good mindset. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him get to the top 10 at some stage. But going in this year, Scheffler, Wolff, Morikawa, I would be surprised if one of those isn't in the top 10, even though it's their first Augusta.
I think the thing with Shane is he hasn't necessarily driven the ball well at Augusta, and I think it's an important part. Yes, it is a second shot golf course, but if you're not in a good position for the second shot, and the one thing is he has driven the ball very well since the restart or since June or whatever. And I think
he was in he was in contention last week as well before 7 on the par 5 hitting into the water.
And he was kind of chasing it, if you like, so you can excuse him. He played well at Wentworth on Sunday. I mean, he hit a couple of hit a good iron shot into the first and missed a 5-footer. I mean, you can't afford to do that at Augusta. And he putted well on Sunday when he was 4 under. I think if he gets that putter hot, his long irons, I think, is where his strength is. When he's hitting, I think his proximity to the hole from 180 to 200 is, he's in the top 10 on the PGA Tour. And I think if he can get the irons good, I think he is driving the ball well anyway. I think there could be something there. And if he can get the putter hot, but like Malachy said, like he finished second at the US Open in 2016. He has that ability. He has experience. He's learned from 2016 at Erin Hills, I think. And he's sort of a better golfer for. And I think, I wouldn't be surprised to see him. I think, look, that the week at Wentworth and the week last week at the Houston Open will give him confidence that his game is in somewhat of a good position. Like it was in a decent position in Portrush. He just found something. He found that little extra. And what's to say he can't do it at Augusta? Look, there's better players on form. There's probably better picks, but look, Shane's got that. Shane's got it in him. He's got the golf in him, and I think there's a lot of other golfers who might necessarily think they have that in them. Whereas I think Shane knows it's in him. It's about getting it out at the right time come Saturday or Sunday. And first he has to make the cut and give himself a chance. And I think that's something he has improved on. He's spoken a lot about it. I've heard him speak a lot about just trying to feed himself into the tournament. You can't win it on Thursday. You can't win it on Friday. Get yourself in a base, tied 15th, tied 20th, and really try and kick on. And that's where he has played well at US Opens in the past and at PGAs.
Yeah, absolutely. And we wish Shane and Rory well. We were going to talk about Tiger. We're going to move into the Q&A, and there's a few comments here on keep them coming in. Just with this links in well with Tiger. Do you feel like the Masters this week and in April, obviously next April, are Tiger's last 2 real chances of winning another green jacket? We'll go to you, Malachy, for that. That's from Sean Gimney. I guess that's a narrative that's quite popular out there in the sense that Tiger's struggling at the moment for form. You know, and then people keep thinking if you can just play well for 2 weeks. But even with something you said earlier about him, Tiger throwing it away, I'd actually done similar to what you did, but a few months ago, watched that back and thought the same thing, that he was kind of given and handed the Masters a small bit as well. But how do you think he'll fare this week? And do you think those are the next 2 Masters are his last real chance of a major?
Well, I didn't think even that last year was a chance of winning a green jacket. I thought he was done, you know. So who am I to say that these are his last 2? I think you could put Tiger in a blindfold and a wheelchair, and he'd still shoot 71 around Augusta. You know, him and Mickelson are, you know, we're even still watching probably 2 of the best 5 Masters players ever. You know, they just, you know, they have a sense of exactly where the ball needs to be on every hole. So look, it's weird. Because it's 18 months since the last one, or 17 months even. It feels longer ago than last year. And he has not followed it up with any, you know, with anything to write home about. He's getting on. He has been through loads of injuries. He doesn't really play very much in public anymore. I presume that if he has his body in serious shape, in decent shape, then this is what he's been aiming at. So I would never count him out. Like until they haven't taken the ceremonial tee shot, I won't count him out of a Masters, you know, because I made that mistake last year. I told everybody that they were buck stupid to be even considering him for it because I thought he was done. So I won't make that mistake again. I don't know that these are his last 2 real chances, because why would that be? Because his body is going to fade. Fine, but I think it's more that, you know, I think he still can find a way to shoot 67 around Augusta. Can he do it 3 days and have the other 70? I don't know. I don't know if anybody can, but he has a sort of a muscle memory for the place that, although there's such a large field of players who are good enough to win underneath it, they don't have that, and that's got to be worth a shot or 2 around to him. So I wouldn't say that these are his last 2, but they're obviously diminishing. You know, I can't see him contending at 50. You know, I wouldn't see that. But the next 2, next 3, who knows? Or he could decide, he could miss the cut on Friday and say, that's it, I'm done, I'm out. You know, give me me and Gary Player take the tee shot next year. I'm finished. So who knows? But he is because of his experience with the place over such a long time. You couldn't say that he has no chance.
Mm-hmm. We've got another question here, Sean. I'll go to you for this one first. If this week is dominated by the likes of Bryson, Wolf, and Champ, which there is the potential, I know Bryson's driving distance is about 20 yards further than Rory McIlroy, who led that same category in 2018, so it's already seeing that progress. And then the likes of Champ and Wolf aren't too far behind Bryson, and Rory's now 4th in driving distance. Sean, do you see any changes they'll make for April, given that it's only like 6 months away? Obviously, you know, they Tiger-proofed the course before.
Yeah, I don't know if they can make a huge amount. They might, you know, firm up certain parts, you know, where the ball, you know, on the second when they're kind of hitting the dog leg left. I mean, they might firm up parts that the ball ends up in the rough. And, you know, I don't think that they will hugely for April. I think there'll be a lot more discussion had at you know, governance level. I think there might have to be. But I think it all depends on, you know, on Sunday afternoon, or sorry, Monday morning or Sunday afternoon, we could have a different discussion on our hands. I mean, if one of them 3 or a similar player is up there. But I mean, what's like, you know, DJ's been up there before, you know, he hits the ball as far as anyone. I mean, I'm not sure about this Bryson Wolf and Champ and all these guys.
It's probably gotten on a little bit. Like these guys are hitting it further than like Bryson is the numbers do back him up there. Like there was a stat someone was going around saying Rory was leading the driving distance in the US Open. It was actually only on 2 holes, and overall Bryson was up about I think 10 or 15 yards on him. So this is happening, I guess. It's just a case of can they do it at Augusta, and if it happens at Augusta, maybe golf will move faster. Like someone mentioned, I think it was on Golf Weekly, that they might, I forgot who it was, Augusta will have no problem bringing in Augusta golf ball if they felt it was the only way to protect the course by playing it at 80% of this, which would be nuts. But you can see Augusta like having the neck to do something like that.
Yeah, and maybe, but I think if we said a few weeks ago, and even before the US Open, I think Augusta's a big test. I mean, if Bryson does dismantle this course, which he can do, but he can also have a breakdown, I think they will act. I mean, if he takes the mick and hits, for example, the first green, which he won't because it's uphill, or if he hits, if he's got 100 yards left in for the second, which he can do, if he goes over the trees, gets a good bounce and rolls down. I mean, yeah, then Augusta could look, but I think the proof will be in the pudding on Sunday and how he gets on. And the likes of Wolf and Champ, I think it's similar for them. And I think if Augusta, I don't know if they'll make a huge amount of changes for April, but I think that the governance of the game will take a harsh view on it and look. And I think all the bodies will come together and say, I don't know how long we can continue with this.
Yeah, there's one for you, Malachy. I think. Do you think the doping debate will ever gain any traction or will continue to be ignored by the rest of the golf media? Your quick thoughts on that.
Lamestream golf.
Lamestream, yeah. That's
I think it will be ignored. I think it has. Why would they change now? They don't. There's no appetite in the golf media to chase it, to make any big stink over anything. Should there, the question is, do you think the doping debate will ever gain any traction? There is no debate. Like, nobody cares. They don't,
in golf's view, there's no upside to digging beneath the surface, I think. And I think that's...
all that would ever make it a thing is if other players start giving out. Like, if you're, like, these guys play for an awful lot of money, like, okay, they're all very rich anyway, but, like, if you are getting beaten week after week by a guy who is essentially robbing £1 million off you, then it's up to you to kick up about it. Like, that's the only thing that will ever happen. That these things only gain traction if players want it to. But no, I don't see it. Like, the golf media, I don't really hold it against them. The golf media has been absolutely decimated in the last 10 years. Like, when I went to Augusta in 2010, there must have been 250 of us. From even just from Ireland, I think there was about a dozen of us. Now, this year is obviously different, but even if this was in a normal year now, there'd be less than 5 going from Ireland. Greg Allen would go from RTE, Philip Reed would go from the Irish Times. I don't think the Indo even sends anybody. Brian Keogh is a freelance. He kind of does it for the Indo and the Examiner. That would be it, and that you transplant that's one country. You transplant that to different countries and transplant it to different cities all around America. Golf media is just completely decimated, and there isn't enough papers and media organizations don't have enough people covering the sport to do it in the sort of depth you would need to get any traction on something like doping. There aren't the resources to allow somebody to take sort of 6 months off to chase somebody and do an investigative piece on somebody that they have suspicions on. It's just not a thing. Like, the media organizations just about tolerate letting a guy go to cover a tournament and come back and tell them who got the birdies and bogeys. And with Tiger about to go off the scene any year now, that will become even less. So, no, the answer to the question is absolutely not. It will continue to be ignored. by the rest of the lamestream golf media.
We're just at the hour, so we'll be very quick on this. Best Irish show for the week, guys, in a word? Or
Rory.
2 words? Sean? You said Rory, was it, Sean? Sorry, you're on mute. Then we've got you. Yeah, I think Sean said Rory there. You're on mute there.
No,
sorry,
I said Shane.
Oh, you said Shane. Wow, okay. Great point.
Shane.
And final then point there, guys. Would you have any picks for any maybe long shots? We all know the favourites, Bryson, myself and Malachy. We're probably having a match bet Bryson, Rory once we work out the odds. But is anyone on the outside you're thinking of? I've one or two I might give at the end. But anyone for someone to just keep an eye on this week?
I will go first. So I have backed Patrick Cantley.
Wow.
Because somebody who shoots what he shot on the weekend last year up until the 16th hole clearly can play the course, and he's 20-1. I think he's a better bet at 20-1 than Bryson is at 8-1. He won a couple of weeks ago. He has played it enough years. He has won. He was the low amateur 1 year. So Patrick Cantley. I always I spent years going over a cliff back in Mickelson at Augusta. I have weaned myself off that now, but at least he did win a couple of those times. I now have a far more dangerous addiction in that I always back Paul Casey now, even though he will never win the bloody thing. But they always just pitch him at big enough odds for me to go, Casey. And I really thought he was going to win the US Open. I really, really did. Or the PGA, the one that Morikawa won.
The one were you on him now, or were you just watching and hoping he didn't
I
win?
backed him, yeah.
Oh, you backed him again, okay.
So yeah, and I really thought he was going to come in. But Casey is 66-1, and they pay out for top tens, and he's had 3, I think he went 6th, 4th, 6th, 15th, and then he missed the cut last year. But I always keep an eye on him. And but of the favourites, I'll back Ram. I think Ram. We went a whole hour here, and I don't think we mentioned him once. But I think he'll win.
Wow, Sean, quickly.
I've got a couple. Look, I think everyone kind of will look at someone like Matt Fitzpatrick for an each way. I actually think that there's a comment in here from a great golf podcast, Talk Birdie, to me, and he says Matt Fitzpatrick each way. And the one thing I have on Matt Fitzpatrick is his caddy, Billy Foster, has been there and done it with Sebi, with Lee Westwood. And I think that's a huge thing because Matt Fitzpatrick has the game there. He's kind of shown that he can do it a bit more on the bigger stage, but I think Billy Foster is huge. And going back to another caddy, I mean, this guy I'm thinking Tippin is 36th in the world. As the Ryder Cup team stands, it's been pointing has been stopped. He's in the Ryder Cup team. It's Victor Perez from France, but he's got JP Fitzgerald on the bag. Rory's former caddy, a good Dubliner, and this guy is going under the radar for 36 in the world. Finished runner-up to Hatton at Wentworth. Finished runner-up to Hatton at the Turkish Airlines. So he has got a little bit of form in that sort of regard. We've seen how well Tara Hatton's done. He's a very good putter, big hitter, and I think at 200-1, I think he'd be kind of my one to look out for. And Justin Rowse at 55-1, his record. I know he's not playing well. I know he's nowhere near it, but he's got the game at Augusta, and I think someone like him could do a job.
You've gone quiet on the Phil Mickelson, Sean. I thought you'd tip him because you mentioned him in passing a few times for majors, and we were getting a lot of comments saying with Sean saying it's not 2012 anymore. But stop talking about Phil Mickelson for golf tournaments.
Phil's always worth the euro each way, whatever. And I think someone like him or Lee Westwood, a euro each way.
Yeah, Lee Westwood's going to be my outsider pick for the Masters. It's one of those. Some years I end up backing loads. I think this year I'm just going to back Lee Westwood and enjoy the golf. But listen, guys, Malachy, thanks a million for joining us, Sean. You too. That's all for today, guys. Thanks for getting your comments and questions in at Tackling Sport and social media if you want to get in touch with us. And we'll be back on Thursday for a preview of the show. And if you're listening live now, this will be up in podcast form in full later on. But listen, from Malachy and Sean